like,
comment, subscribe.
Serial killers kill. It's in the name. But why? Why do they kill? Is it to feel powerful? Is it to feel in control? Could it be for selfish pleasure? Maybe it's just because they can. Today's true crime story centers around a killer couple, Gerald and Charlene Gallego. Charlene Adele Williams was born on the 10th of October, 1956, to a well-off family in California. Her father was the vice president of a supermarket chain. Due to his position, he would often have to travel. But he was lucky to have a travel companion. His wife, Mercedes. Her mother would later be involved in a car crash, leaving her severely injured. Mercedes could no longer handle traveling with her husband. Charlene took her mother's role, and would accompany her father on his trips. During her high school years, Carol would experiment with drugs. Eventually marries a wealthy, heroin addict. The marriage wouldn't last. According to her ex-husband, Charlene's parents would consistently get involved in their relationship, leading to their divorce. Charlene would be married again, to a soldier. But she filed for a divorce, claiming that he was boring. Her next relationship would be with a married man. But that affair wouldn't last. Her lover calls it quits, after Charlene asks the man if they could have a three-way with his wife. Carol was now at a low point. Even attempts suicide. But then she meets Gerald Galego. Gerald was born on the 17th of July 1946. His mother was a prostitute, and she had many clients. It was these clients that would often abuse him. His father was a career criminal from the 1950s. It's sad that Gerald would never get to know his father, even though he was named after him. As a child he was alone, dirty and hungry, always looking for affection. But Gerald grows up fast. By 13, he starts his criminal career by sexually abusing a 6-year-old girl. He then gets married at 16 to a 21-year-old woman, and becomes a father a year later. After the marriage inevitably falls apart, Gerald gains custody of his daughter, who ends up living with his parents. 2 years later, in 1966, Gerald gets married once again, to a waitress. But barely a month would pass by until it's over. It's later revealed that Gerald liked hitting his partners. On the 14th of October 1967, was just another wedding date for Gerald. Because, like before, this marriage wouldn't last. His wife left due to his physical abuse. On the 4th of March 1969, Gerald marries wife number 4. His then pregnant 19-year-old bride leaves him too. Yes, because of his abuse. On the 5th of October 1974, Gerald weds bride number 5, a 19-year-old laundry worker. This relationship didn't last either. They separate in August 1977. At a card club in Sacramento, he meets Charlene Williams. Not long afterwards, he's seen walking down the aisle once again. Charlene and Gerald would get married. It didn't seem to bother him that he was still legally married to his previous wife. On the 11th of September 1978, Rhonda Scheffler, 17, and Kippy Vaught, 16, had spent some time at the mall in Sacramento. But Charlene had somehow lured the girls to their van, where they were abducted. They drove to a secluded spot in Baxter, California, where Gerald repeatedly raped them. When he was finally satisfied, they drove out to Slough House. He forced the teens out of the van, and walks with them towards a ditch. He hits the girls with the tire iron. He then points his gun at their heads, and pulls the trigger. Satisfied that they're dead, Gerald begins to walk back to the van. But there was movement behind him. Someone was still alive. He walks back to the crime scene and notices Kippy Vaughn was moving. The bullet didn't penetrate her skull, only grazed it. Gerald soon rectified the problem by shooting Kippy 3 more times in the head. Then on the 24th of June 1979, Brenda Judd, 14, and Sandra Colley, 13, were out enjoying their day at the Washoe County Fair. That all changed when they met Charlene. She once again lured them to the van, where they were abducted. Charlene was driving the van while her husband was raping the girls in the back. They drove to an isolated area and parked. Charlene, now in control, made the girls perform sexual acts on one another. Eventually, when Gerald was no longer entertained, he grabs Sandra and a shovel, and walks her towards a dried-out creek. He swings his shovel, and hits Sandra across the head. She drops to her knees, before finally falling on her face. After beating Brenda to death, Gerald would bury them, placing a rock on top of the grave. If it wasn't for Charlene's confession during her trial, their murders would have gone unnoticed. The girls were originally considered as runaways. Their remains would be discovered sometime in November 1999. On April 24, 1980, Stacy Redican and Karen Chipman Twiggs were abducted from a mall in Sacramento. They were beaten to death. On the 6th of June 1980, Linda Teresa Aguilar was hitchhiking out in Oregon. She simply disappeared. Her remains were later found in a shallow grave near a beach. She was found with her skull crushed, and with her arms and legs still tied. Further investigation revealed sand found in her nose and throat, indicating that she was buried alive. On July 17, 1980, Virginia Mockle, 34, a bartender, had completed her shift. Her plans was to head for home. But Gerald and Charlene made different plans for her. She was abducted in the pub's parking lot. 3 months later, her remains would finally be discovered. Strangulation is believed to be the cause of death, based on the rope found near her head and neck. On the 2nd of November 1980, Craig Miller, 22, and fiancée, Mary Elizabeth Soares, 21, had left a fraternity party. At around 1:30, they were spotted by Gerald and Charlene standing by the side of the road. Gerald walks up to the couple and points his gun at them, and ordered them into the car. Driving to a secluded spot, Craig was ordered out of the car. He was to walk towards the front of the car, with Gerald following behind him. Suddenly, a shot is heard, and Craig drops to the ground. Gerald had shot him in the back of the head, in full view of his fiancée, followed by another 2 shots to the head, just to be sure. Charlene then drives to their apartment. Gerald rapes the terrified girl the whole night. Charlene and Gerald drives Mary to an isolated place. He orders her to get out, then points the gun at her from close range, and pulls the trigger, shooting her 3 times. Craig and Mary's friends witnessed their abduction, and reported it to the police. They run the license plate number. The car was registered to Charlene's parents. The police questioned Charlene on their whereabouts. She explained that they went for a movie, and they used Gerald's Triumph. They reminded her that the Triumph was parked out front, all night. Charlene then changed her story and tells them she was wasted. She can't remember which car they used. By that time, Gerald knew he had to move Craig's body, before the police finds him. That night they return to the crime scene, but finds nothing. Craig's body was gone. Gerald now knows that the police already found Craig's body, and that they were on to him, and that it was a good time to run. They abandoned their car somewhere in Reno, then hopped a bus for Salt Lake City. Once there, Charlene calls her parents asking to wire them some money. In Nebraska, she calls her parents again asking for some more cash. But by this time Charlene's parents had already spoken to the FBI. On the 17th of November, FBI agents were waiting at a Western Union office on Gerald and Charlene to collect the cash that her parents had wired them. They were surprised to see agents promptly placing them under arrest. Gerald and Charlene are both charged with kidnapping and murder. They pleaded not guilty. Charlene's legal team was successful in convincing prosecutors to allow Charlene to testify against Gerald, in exchange for a lighter sentence of under 17 years. In June 1983, Gerald received the death penalty for the murders of Mary Beth Soers and Craig Miller. In June 1984, Gerald receives the death penalty for the murders of Karen Twiggs and Stacey Redican. In 2002, while waiting to be executed, a 56-year-old Gerald Gallego dies of cancer. Charlene was released in July 1997. Charlene claimed once in an interview that she considered herself a victim, when quote,
"There were victims who died. And there were victims who lived. It's taken me a hell of a long time to realize that I'm one of the ones who lived."
End quote. She also claimed to have tried to save some of their lives. Was she really a victim? Or is she simply playing one? What do you think?